to the Silver Bullets podcast. I am Michael Citro.
And I'm Chip Minnich.
Chip, we just watched a whole lot of Ohio State players take the next step in their careers and get their assignments of where they're going to be playing football at the professional level.
Yeah, congratulations to all the young men who were either selected or have been fortunate enough to sign as undrafted free agents with a number of NFL teams that we're going to be discussing tonight.
Yeah, we're going to do that a little bit later in our show, but that is certainly something to stick around for, especially if you're like one of those day one watchers and then you just kind of, lose interest or whatever. I know it could be a little tedious, especially the last day of the draft where, they're just whizzing through so fast that you can't. They don't even get a chance to talk about the draft pick until like 5 or 6 picks later, and it's a little annoying that they just can't keep up with it. But then in the first round, they have all this time to fill because everybody uses almost the entire clock, if not the entire clock. So it's like the reverse problems of night one you have on the final day. But we'll talk about that a little later in the program. Before we get to that, though, we have couple other things to talk about. One of the things we were going to talk about, and we still are, is a transfer portal announcement. But today, as you and I record this, we found out where the player will be going, and that's, of course, Jameson Williams gets into the transfer portal, and it turns out, Chip, going to Alabama.
Well, I will say, first of all, best of luck to Jameson Williams. He is leaving with no ill regard, from what I understand, towards Ohio State, and he's looking at the depth chart and where he currently sits on it, and looking at the opportunity to possibly play more. Believe it or not, the defending national champion just lost 2 starting wide receivers that were both selected in that aforementioned NFL draft. So he's looking at that depth chart. On a personal note, I'm certainly glad that even though the possibility that Ohio State may be seeing Jameson Williams suiting up for Alabama in a playoff game in 2021, one of the other schools that he was considering was that team up north. So I'm certainly glad that he did not truly go down what would have poisoned the relationship between Ohio State fans and Jameson Williams.
That would have been the darkest timeline for Jameson Williams, I think. You and I have talked at length about the GERD principle, I like to call it, about the longer a quarterback has been around Jim Harbaugh, the worse he plays. So, probably not great for a wide receiver to have a quarterback with diminishing returns over the course of time. It's a good move for Jameson Williams. Congrats to him. I think this speaks highly of a couple of things. One, the return of Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson obviously played a big role in this because it freed up nothing in terms of your top 2 productive pass catchers at the wide receiver positions. But I also think, Chip, that this means a great deal for guys like Jackson Smith and Jigba and what the future holds for him, especially in the near term, and guys like Marvin Harrison Jr. And Emeka Egbuka. I think guys like that are moving up it's just going to be so hard to keep them off the field that I think even as Jameson Williams was nominally a starter, and this is not going to be a place where he can start.
I think you hit it right on the head, Michael. I think that again, he's leaving with, to the best of my knowledge, with nothing bad to say about Ohio State, and I certainly wish him nothing but the best. I'm sure you could appreciate the irony. I think I saw on Twitter something like, I'm just so happy that Alabama is able to get, some of these good players, or something along those lines, like after, after they've just had 10 players selected in the NFL draft. But getting back to what you said about Ohio State's depth chart, I think you're absolutely correct when you say it speaks volumes about the talent that has been recruited and is being developed. I think Jackson Smith and Jigba certainly was making a move on the depth chart. I'm sure that the coaches conveyed that to Jameson Williams. I would believe that Jameson Williams had to respect the honesty and the forthright way that they conveyed, hey, you're not necessarily guaranteed to start, that you'll play, but Jackson Smith and Jigba was also going to possibly start and play as well. I think what you also just said about Marvin Harrison Jr., Emeka Egbuka, the other receivers that are in that room, it's going to be very difficult for any wide receiver, to necessarily I think it's going to be very difficult to necessarily say that they're going to start and get the lion's share of the time. I think even as we've discussed previously, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, I think the coaches are going to really do their very best to try and have that wide receiver rotation to try and keep all these talented players happy in 2021 and beyond.
Yeah, I think we have to see a return to that six-man rotation. As good as Olave and Garrett Wilson are, I think you absolutely have to start seeing more rotation and more spreading the ball around, because you're going to have to keep these guys happy, especially for at least 1 year, because after this year you would expect that Olave and Garrett Wilson's departures will create just an incredible feeding frenzy for two starting positions the next year.
Certainly. And here's another name that we haven't really talked about a lot because, number one, he hasn't played a lot. And number two, he was withheld from the spring, is Julian Fleming. I mean, you're talking about, for all of the, and I'm not saying that it's unwarranted hype about Marvin Harrison Jr. or Emeka Egbuka, and we saw some flashes from Jaden Ballard in the spring game. The reality is Julian Fleming was the number one wide receiver by recruiting services a year ago. And he's one of those other guys that, like you said, it's going to be very difficult. I'm sure all of the college coaches around the country are, oh, poor Ohio State. You've got too much talent at wide receiver. But it's in all seriousness, it's going to be, as you just said, that it's going to be incumbent upon the coaching staff to truly come up with a rotation. Nobody's going to be 100% happy, but I think as long as the players who have shown that they are ready, willing, and able to contribute on the field beyond not just catching the ball, but also being solid blockers and all great route runners, all those things that go beyond what just catching the ball. I think it's going to be so important that the coaches truly play a rotation amongst those talented wide receivers.
Yeah, this is not in the grand scheme of things, it's not that big a deal for Ohio State for all the talent we just talked about. It's good for Jameson Williams. It's obviously good for Alabama. The only downside that I can see to this at all is that now if you meet up in a national championship game or in a college football playoff with Alabama, you've got a guy with inside knowledge right there, saying, hey, these are our concepts. These are what we did. It kind of forces maybe some changes of signals and that kind of thing.
Certainly. That is the kind of issue that I'm sure that Ryan Day and Brian Hartline and the other Kevin Wilson, the other offensive coaches probably were having those discussions, but those are, I guess you could say, those are problems that they would need to be contemplating, I don't want to say over the summer per se, but it's not necessarily something that is going to keep them up at night. I think it's they'll probably want to make sure that they make those adjustments, but they probably want to make sure that they are focused on the task at hand, and that is, like you said, making sure that they have developed a strong rotation amongst the remaining receivers, and making sure that those remaining receivers are ready to go when Ohio State takes the field against Minnesota for the opening game in September.
Right. So big news there, but ultimately for Ohio State, not a huge deal. Big deal for Jameson Williams, obviously. Good luck to him, and if they meet in the playoffs, so be it. It is what it is. But this is not a reason to get on social media and attack a kid who has made a decision that he feels is in his best interest. And, the best that we can do is to say, look, good luck to you. We have that, you know, it's not like the cupboard's bare and you're leaving us in the lurch. Don't be negative about it. There's no reason to be negative about it.
Yeah, it one of the perils of social media is absolutely what you just said, is that people sometimes take this completely the wrong way in attacking the young man, being critical of his decision. He is not doing anything except making a decision that he feels is in his best interest. End of story. That's all it is.
It doesn't make someone a traitor, and it's not spelled Trader anyway.
There you go. Very well said.
All right, let us talk about another Buckeye who has left, who never truly arrived, really. Decommitment of Dasan McCullough and a commitment to Indiana. And this is, on the surface of it, you go, whoa, wait a minute. We lost a kid to Indiana. Indiana was able to flip a guy. There's some special circumstances here, and I think it's been covered well on other podcasts. If you listen to Buckeye Weekly, you've already heard the story, but we'll go over it anyway because not everybody has time to listen to 65 podcasts a week. But Dasan McCullough's dad, Deland, is it pronounced Deland?
Delan. Or like Delan. Let me rephrase that. It's like there's no the end at the end is Dasan McCullough.
Okay.
You know, it's silent.
All right.
And he was I know you're going to recapitulate the story, but he was a standout running back at Miami University in the 90s, and that's kind of where the interesting aspect of this, I think, truly needs to be focused upon.
Yeah, and I wasn't going to go that far back. I just was going to say that he is, the abbreviated version is he's Indiana's associate head coach and running backs coach. And but Dasan was already committed to Ohio State when that happened. He was going to stay with his commitment, but his brothers both have now chosen to play at Indiana, and this is a chance for him to play with two brothers under his dad, and that's just a very unique situation. It's too good of an opportunity for him to pass up. Indiana's got a good program going there. They're on the upswing. So this is a special, kind of situation, and it's not something that we should, be negative about or give a young man, difficulty over. He's made a decision, and it's based on family. And his arrival with Indiana, he becomes their top commit in the entire history of the Indiana Hoosiers, number 50 overall in the class, in some services. So, all we can really do is wish him well. This is a situation where I think most people would say, look, I could chase national championships with a top program that chases them and is in the running for them every year, or I can play with my brothers for my dad and have an opportunity to lift this program to that level. So I think it's an amazing story, and it does suck that Ohio State won't have him, but at the same time, you can't really fault the reasoning behind it.
No, not at all. And I'm not going to rehash the Dasan McCullough story because it's a fascinating thing that's kind of where for anyone who may have seen his story, I think it was on like an ESPN E60 whatever kind of segment about his backstory and why the importance of family. It's a fascinating story, which is kind of, I think, what probably prompted Dasan McCullough as well as his brothers. Like you said, it's the opportunity to play at a program that has not traditionally been a powerhouse, but the opportunity to play with his brothers on, underneath the tutelage of his father, at least on the coaching staff. And if you want to really take this back to who's to blame, and he's a popular villain and he's a big boy, he can take it. It's all Mike Hart's fault because Mike Hart was the running back coach at Indiana, and Dasan McCullough was on the staff of the Kansas City Chiefs when Dasan gave his verbal commitment last year. And it's because Dasan had previous experience working in Indiana. I believe he's not only the running back coach now, but also the associate head coach.
Correct.
So it's certainly a step up, probably for someone who's looking to become a head coach sometime down the road. But if Mike Hart hadn't left Indiana's staff to go to that team up north, then Dasan McCullough would probably still be at the pro level with the Kansas City Chiefs. And who's to say that Dasan probably still, would be verbally committed. But that like I said, now we're starting to go into, kind of those conspiracy theory rooms and things of that nature.
Yeah.
I in all seriousness, I wish the young man nothing but the best. I really do believe it is going to be a tremendous experience for him, getting the opportunity to play on a team with his brothers under the tutelage of his father on the coaching staff. The biggest negative as an Ohio State fan is this is one of those rare circumstances where Ohio State, it's been a while, so that if it probably doesn't taste that familiar, the fact that you're looking at a recruit that Ohio State wanted, and now Ohio State's going to be playing against frequently for at least the next 3 years, beginning in 2022. You're going to be watching him suit up against Ohio State, and when or if he makes big plays against Ohio State, kind of thinking, oh, what might have been had he suited up for Ohio State.
Yeah, and as Tony Gerdeman pointed out, we don't really know or have a great sense of how Ohio State was going to best use him, and it'll be interesting to see what Indiana does with him.
Precisely. He's one of those hybrid. He could have been linebacker / defensive end. I think he was. You and I make no secret of it that we don't really follow the recruiting as closely as Gerd or Tom Orr or any of the other talented individuals at Buckeye Scoop. But what I seem to remember is that I think he was kind of classified as an athlete, meaning that Ohio State just kind of knew, all right, we want you and you're going to play, but we're not really sure. Like, he was the kind of guy that he could have played linebacker, but possibly outgrown that into defensive end. And so that's kind of where I think on the recruiting side of things, where it's not as easy as, we'll just go out and recruit another linebacker or just go out and recruit another defensive end. There were certain skill sets that Dasan McCullough possessed that obviously made him attracted to Ohio State that not every recruit necessarily just has. It's not as, just go get another one. So that's probably why it stings, I think, on the Mark Gibler scale, the pain scale article that I saw in Buckeye Scoop, on a scale of 1 to 10, that he rated this as an 8 on the pain scale. So that's kind of, that kind of gives you an idea in terms of the talent. Like you said, Michael, that this is a young man who is arguably the most talented recruit in the history of Indiana football. So he's going to have a lot to live up to in terms of prestige and expectations, but I certainly wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, top 50 recruit in the nation. It's pretty good. And those are the kind of guys that Ohio State wants to bring in. And it would have been, it would have been interesting to see where they played him. It would have been interesting to see how they used him. But like, to your point, I mean, that's like if Kyle Pitts would have transferred from Florida, and Florida just would not have a like-for-like replacement for that.
Very good comparison. Yeah, something, like, that weird hybrid matchup in the case of Dasan McCullough, obviously on the defensive side. But, yeah, I think you're hitting it spot on.
Yeah, so anyway, a couple of names that are not going to be part of the rich tapestry of Ohio State football. We will, of course, watch their careers develop with a great deal of interest, as we always do, and to see how they shake out. We probably won't be following them the way we followed Joe Burrow, for example, but it will be interesting to keep an eye on those guys when their teams are playing.
Exactly. I certainly think it'll be a little easier to keep tabs on Jameson Williams simply because Alabama being such a nationally profile program, that as I said when we started discussing the fact that he's going there and the possibility of him sliding into, if not a starting role, a contributing role this year, I think we'll be able to keep closer eyes on him at least in 2021. And then, as far as Dasan McCullough, we'll start to see what kind of contributions he makes. Hopefully not too many against Ohio State, but again, very talented young men.
Yeah, and with Indiana becoming a growing program within the Big Ten East, obviously we're going to watch that program with a great deal of interest. So
certainly, yeah, Tom Allen has that program pointed in the right direction, without a doubt.
So good luck to both young men. Ohio State will have to just get by on the meager scraps that are left behind, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what I was thinking.
Our diamond shoes are too tight, and our wallet won't hold all of our 50s. It's rough. It's rough.
Yeah, I'll have to dab my eyes, the tears, with the like the hundreds or whatever, like you saw in Dumb and Dumber, that kind of thing.
All right, Chip. Well, you and I are going to talk about the NFL-bound Buckeyes. Let's get to that right after this. All right, we're back, Chip. Let us talk about the Buckeyes who just got drafted this past weekend. It was a little bit of an interesting NFL draft. We saw some guys probably fall a little further than they should have. Maybe some guys who didn't get taken where we thought they would. Some guys maybe didn't get taken at all that we thought might get taken. And, let's get into all of that. Let's just quickly run down the ones that were drafted. Of course, that started on day one with Justin Fields. Slipped a little bit, went to the Chicago Bears, 11th overall in the first round. The next Buckeye off the board probably confused a lot of people who don't think much of him. And a guy who has been maligned by fans but beloved by the coaches. Pete Werner goes to the Saints in the second round, 60th overall. A good landing spot for a Buckeye because you're going to see plenty of guys familiar faces. Josh Myers then went to the Packers in the second round, 62nd overall, 2 picks after Werner. Josh Myers will be trying to take the job left behind by Corey Linsley when he left to go to the Chargers. And then in the third round, a couple of more Buckeyes. Wyatt Davis goes to the Vikings in the third round, 86th overall. Trey Sermon to the 49ers in the third round, 88th overall. And at the end of the third round, 105th overall, Baron Browning selected by the Broncos. And then, kudos to you and your Browns, Chip, for taking Tommy Togiai in the fourth round, 132nd overall. I thought that was far too low for Tommy Togiai. Luke Farrell then goes to be reunited with Urban Meyer in Jacksonville with the Jaguars, 5th round, 145th overall. Sean Wade also in the 5th round, 160th overall, goes to the Ravens, who I think know a little bit about talent and how to evaluate it. And the 10th player taken to tie Alabama for the most from any school, Jonathan Cooper goes to the Broncos in the 7th round, 239th overall. And so he'll get to hang out with Baron Browning. And Chip, this seemed like going into it, it was going to be a light draft year for Ohio State, but even in a light draft year, double figures and tied with Alabama for the most.
Yeah, it certainly was. Like you said, I think 10. I know that we'll talk in a little while about some of the players that possibly could have been drafted that instead signed as undrafted free agents. Congratulations to all of the 10 who were selected. I must confess that I am such a NFL draft junkie that I did watch both Friday night and Saturday. Actually, let me rephrase that. Thursday and Friday night, pretty much from start to finish. And so I was able to, kind of keep an eye on in terms of, not only the Justin Fields selection on Thursday night, but all the players who were selected on Friday, as you said, beginning with Pete Werner and then ending on day 2 with Baron Browning. Here's the embarrassing thing I will say as a Browns fan, and that is on Saturday, the weather was beautiful up in the Cleveland, Ohio area. And ordinarily, I would have voluntold one of my sons to cut the grass. But since they both have jobs, I had to cut the grass. I was out cutting grass listening to the draft when the good news came across on my phone that Andrew Berry had made the selection of Tommy Togiai in the 4th round. So I wasn't able to see it, but I will give credit to Andrew Berry for recognizing the fact that as the draft was being held in Cleveland, he actually took the time. I'm not sure if you have seen the video clip of him, but he looked into the camera and said how the Cleveland Browns were selecting Tommy Togiai from the Ohio State University, and the crowd loved it. So I'm certainly happy to see that the Browns are. I would not have minded some of the other players that we'll be discussing, like Jonathan Cooper or Sean Wade, possibly joining Tommy Togiai, but I certainly understand beggars can't be choosers, and the Browns. They followed their draft board, so I'm happy to see at least another Buckeye to join. Denzel Ward is coming to Cleveland.
Yeah, I'm a little jealous because my Dolphins had a chance to take a couple of Buckeyes at places where I thought they would be really well taken, and they did not take them, and I was not happy with that. They needed a center, and so Josh Myers I think went a little higher than a lot of people thought he would go, but that was a guy I thought might be headed to Miami. And then this Dolphins team, I know they got Myles Gaskin, but they really could have used a running back. They did get one late, but I mean, I really wanted them to say Trey Sermon's name, and they did not. So that is 2 years in a row where I've been disappointed because my team did not take an Ohio State running back when an Ohio State running back was available. They were in line. I thought for sure they would take Dobbins. They did not. They were then in a position to take Sermon. They did not. And so I got shut out of Buckeyes.
I feel your pain, my man, because as somebody who has grown accustomed to watching the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Baltimore Ravens repeatedly take Buckeyes who have had no shortage of success at the next level, especially against the Cleveland Browns, I can feel your pain. I'm just glad to see that Andrew Berry, I'm going to give credit to John Dorsey because he was the general manager at that time when Denzel Ward was picked 4th overall. But I'm glad to see Andrew Berry recognize that, there's an interior defensive lineman who can basically bench press a Mercedes available in the 4th round. Surprisingly, I thought for sure as the 4th round began that the Browns actually selected an offensive lineman from Cincinnati who no offense to this young man. I really thought by the time that the Browns, that 2nd, 4th round selection was going to come up, that for sure Tommy Togiai would be off the board. So yeah, I'm happy that Togiai is coming up to what looks to be an opportunity for him to not only make the team, but also be part of the rotation along the interior defensive line.
Yeah, my Dolphins did not have a 4th round pick. I was after Friday. I was thinking Tommy Togiai still out there. Man, would I love to see him playing for Miami. I think that he's a kid that can come in, and I think he can start or at least get in the rotation in year 1. I think a lot of people are sleeping on just how strong he is, how quick he is. I think we saw, you and I, and Ohio State fans, the absence of him in the Alabama game.
Very good point. Yeah, a lot of people were kind of speculating, it was a mistake for Tommy Togiai to declare for the NFL draft because he wasn't picked until the 4th round. I kind of look at it as first of all, it has to be a very difficult decision for any of these young men to make this decision to go. I think, as getting back to Tommy Togiai, as you said, I think he is going to be a disruptive presence for the Browns on that interior defensive line. I know that they have some other defensive linemen that they're very excited for the perimeter pass rush that they have. And certainly with Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, who they recently signed, that's that perimeter. But I think, as you said, and I agree with you, that I think Tommy Togiai's strength is underestimated. The fact that, I was trying to give my wife an idea in terms of how strong. I showed the clip from Buckeyes Scoop of him casually bench pressing 225 pounds 40 times consecutively, to kind of give her an idea as to, when we talk about how strong he is. So I certainly think if he doesn't start, he's certainly going to be on that rotation, and I think he's going to be a solid addition for the Browns.
I mean, if you have an interior defensive lineman who can stalemate a double team, and he can do that, that is an incredible thing to have for your defense, and that's a thing that I would really wanted for my defense, which was really bad against the run, and I would have liked to have had him keeping Jerome Baker clean and other guys. So that's now he's going to be doing that for the Browns. Let's talk a little bit about Justin Fields. Obviously, that was the big name from the first night, and there was a lot of crap, I'll call it, in the build up to the draft about some people talking about they heard there were character issues, which is ridiculous when you talk about this kid. And then there were some rumblings about the epilepsy being an issue, and he slips to 11th. The Bears traded back up to get him, right?
Yes, the Bears were originally slated to pick at number 20.
Yeah.
And as soon as, from what I understand, it's kind of, how do I say it? It's one of these things where as soon as the Cowboys saw, it's kind of the weird chess match, for lack of a better word, that you have with NFL teams. As soon as the Carolina Panthers and Denver Broncos, with their selections at 8 and 9, Carolina took J.C. Horn, Denver took Patrick Surtain II, and the Cowboys, looking at their draft board, they wanted, I think, one of those two. And as soon as they saw that, they made a deal with Philadelphia down to 12. It was one of these things where I think Chicago started thinking, all right, if we don't make a deal from 20 up to, and that's when they made the deal with the Giants at 11, they were looking at the board and they were saying, Justin Fields is going to quite literally fall in Bill Belichick's lap.
I know, right?
And so that's why it's like I said, so it's like one of these weird things where it's like you have to kind of almost Sun Tzu, like think like your enemy type kind of a mindset. Think about, all right, this is the guy that we want. What do we have to do? And the other NFL rumors are that the Minnesota Vikings were certainly ready to pounce at 14, and they also were interested in moving up with the Giants, but Chicago made a very sweet offer with giving up their 2022 first round selection in addition to some of the other picks, which I can't recall. That was enough to swing the deal for Chicago instead of Minnesota.
Yeah, you're right. And I watched, like you, I watched Thursday night, Friday night, and I watched as much as I could on Saturday. I had some responsibilities, but I did watch good chunks of Saturday as well. But the whole thing with Justin Fields, that to see, it wasn't surprising to see Zach Wilson maybe go ahead of him. Trey Lance, I'm not sure that I would have done what the San Francisco 49ers did. I don't think you need to move up quite that high to get Trey Lance. So, and my team was involved in that as well, the Dolphins. So they ended up getting the guy they wanted in Trey Lance. I'm not sure that they didn't overpay to get him when they could have had a Justin Fields, but Justin Fields is a Bear, which is going to be really, really terrible on Twitter because Bears Twitter is awful. And but I will always be eternally grateful to the Bears for keeping him out of Bill Belichick's hands.
I will say this much about the 49ers' decision to draft Trey Lance, and this is I obviously, not privy to any of the interviews, any of the workouts, any of those things that took place. And I agree with your highly technical term of the crap that Justin Fields had to endure. And that is the 49ers, correct me if I'm wrong, the 49ers gave up two number one draft choices, plus they swapped to move from 12 up to 3. And I know that Miami then moved back up with Philadelphia and all that kind of stuff. Is my concern, if I was the 49ers, is that, as you said, it was a very steep price, is you're giving up all those draft choices for a quarterback who played at the FCS level and opted out of 2020 instead of a player the caliber of Justin Fields, as we saw what he could do not only this past season, the previous season. I mean, I thought everything in terms of his arm strength, his mobility. I know that there was a lot of discussion about it was going to be either Mac Jones or Trey Lance. I respect, kind of what the 49ers in terms of putting that narrative out. I really did think it was just a complete smokescreen. Up until the moment they announced Trey Lance, I thought it was going to be Justin Fields at number 3 with San Francisco for the price they paid. I really did.
Yeah, this was I mean, exactly what you said. I mean, Miami had that selection because of a previous trade. It was Houston Texans' spot in the draft. Miami had acquired that in a previous trade. They traded down to 12, picked up a first and third in 2022 and a 2023 first round pick in that. So San Francisco gave up a lot to get this kid, and I don't think that they needed to. I think he might have been. They might have only been able. If they'd have moved into the top 12, they probably would have got him.
Something like that. I know that.
I mean, they started at 12, so right, I mean, he probably is there for them.
Right. The story that I've heard is that they fell in love with his in terms of on the testing side of it, in terms of being able to verbatim when it comes to their plays and whatnot. That's all fine and good. I'm going to give credit to Justin Fields for two things. Number one, the story is now coming out with Chicago that Matt Nagy had a similar type of an experience with Justin Fields, where he could remember precisely their play calling terminology and was able to repeat back to them just kind of casually, again, in one of their pre-draft visits. The second thing that I want to give credit to Justin Fields is, we're talking about all the quote unquote crap that he's dealt with, is that I saw a video clip of him as he was being called by Matt Nagy announcing the decision to be selected by Chicago. And at one point, Justin Fields says, no more talking. Like there's been too much talking. Like he recognizes the fact that there was a lot of negativity unfairly directed towards him, and he's too classy of an individual to respond in kind. I think he's going to let his playing, on the field do all of his talking for him. I wish him nothing but the best, obviously, in Chicago. I think he's going into a challenging situation where Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace, who's the general manager, the strong speculation is that their jobs might be on the line this year if Chicago continues to flounder or struggle. But I think the Bears are going to do everything in their power to make sure that Justin Fields is well prepared before they put him out there. I know that Andy Dalton is not necessarily an exciting quarterback, but at least if he can be somewhat as a competent player, as somewhat of a mentor to Justin Fields up until the point when Justin Fields has demonstrated he's ready to go, that's when you turn it over to him. And I think Justin Fields is going to do great things for Chicago. Bears Twitter be damned. I think we'll just
yes.
we'll just have to abide it.
Yes, be damned, Chicago Bears Twitter. Gut feeling: does Fields start or does Dalton start on opening day?
Oh, wow. I'm gonna say gut feeling is that he is going to start. It really is. You and I both know. I was telling my wife, and I can't speak on your behalf. I remember, even though I was, back in the day, I remember John Elway stinking up the joint as a rookie in 1983. I mean, so bad that Denver they benched him because they thought, oh, let's throw him in here. And then the first few games they always had to relieve him with Steve DeBerg. Eventually, obviously, as you could see, John Elway figured things out. He has one of those stylish jackets that they wear in Canton for the Hall of Fame. But you probably remember Dan Marino. Came into a great situation, a team that had come off of a Super Bowl appearance the previous year. So he had a better supporting cast around him. Dan Marino flourished as a rookie. So I think it really depends on what Justin Fields does and shows in the mini camps and in preseason. And I think if he's ready to go, I think they're going to let him do it because Andy Dalton is fairly limited. I mean, he's not going to, he truly is like in that category of game manager.
Yeah.
Justin Fields, I think can, once he knows precisely what the offense, what it's calling for, he can take over a game with his legs as well as his arms. So yeah, I'll go with the gut feeling that I think Justin Fields is the game one starter.
I agree with you. And I'm going to join you out on the lawn, yelling at kids. But back in our day, you didn't play rookie quarterbacks unless something happened, something terrible had to happen. It was just not a thing you did. You really wanted that rookie to get 2 or even 3 years in as, the clipboard holder and maybe getting in at garbage time, but you didn't want to throw them to the wolves. And now that thinking is out the window. If a rookie is even close to the incumbent or to the veteran, and if you're not super excited about that veteran, that rookie goes right in the starting lineup.
Well, yeah, speaking of the rookie issues, is I'm not sure if you heard it on the NFL draft, but for example, Trevor Lawrence, who is heading to Jacksonville with Urban Meyer, and the reason he wears number 16 is that his favorite player when he was growing up is Peyton Manning, who wore number 16 at Tennessee. And Peyton Manning is basically already said to him along the lines of rookie quarterbacks and mistakes that you have to just kind of grit your teeth and get through, is that he is secretly hoping that Trevor Lawrence breaks his rookie record of most interceptions thrown in a season, because it's something that Peyton Manning is certainly not proud of. But you're right. I am old enough to remember when rookie quarterbacks were to hold a clipboard and not necessarily play. You're precisely right that thinking has kind of gone out the window, that if they're showing that they're even remotely close to being able to navigate the offense as well as the veteran, you want to see what you've got. And I think Justin Fields, again, since there is a rookie salary cap, for lack of a better word, a slotting schedule, you really don't have to worry about holdouts anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like, it's pretty much like, all right, you already know kind of an idea as to how much money Justin Fields is going to be making and earning. So it's in his best interest to sign on the dotted line as soon as Chicago presents the offer. I know that the Chicago fans have certainly embraced him. I mean, like the fact that I thought I saw, was it maybe a Chicago Blackhawks jersey with the number 1 on it? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I'm sure the baseball teams in Chicago are also excited about him. So
I've seen the White Sox with a jersey.
Okay,
for him
is it
already.
the White Sox? Okay, I wasn't sure if I knew that the Blackhawks gave him a jersey. I didn't know if the White Sox did. So yeah, I just, if anything, if he can show that he is ready to go, I agree with you. I think turn it over to him and see what you got.
Yeah, one of the perks of these brand new millionaires is that you get free authentic jerseys from sports teams.
I can only speak from the perspective of the Cleveland Browns, is that with their first round selection, Greg Newsome, he has already endeared himself to Cleveland fans. He was at a Cleveland Cavaliers game. I believe it was Friday night, was presented with a new jersey. I want to say the second round draft choice, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame, same type thing on Saturday night. So yeah, it must be nice. Like you're the toast of the town, and we're just going to give you brand new, authentic jerseys, to welcome you.
This is the honeymoon. If you don't
That's
produce,
right.
if you don't produce, the honeymoon ends pretty quick.
Like I said, you want to talk about some painful memories. Johnny Manziel. The night he was selected 7 years ago, I can tell you, and I actually have a number of witnesses there that I was at a friend's home, and the weather was actually nice enough to be outside. And I was hoping and hoping and hoping, please don't take Johnny Manziel, just knowing how much of a disaster it was going to be. And as soon as the pick was made, let's just say that the volume of profanity that came out of my mouth, my friend was really kind of like, calm down, telling me to settle down. But you talk about the honeymoon phase. Johnny Manziel squandered it immediately by going off to Vegas and being a drunken fool. And it never really ever recovered after NFL draft night in 2014.
Yeah, if you would have told me that quarterbacks would go 1, 2, 3 in this draft, I would have definitely thought Justin Fields would have been one of those three, but that's not the way it happened. And you and I are old enough to remember the last time quarterbacks went 1, 2, 3 in the draft. That number 2 quarterback turned out to have a pretty decent career. That was Donovan McNabb. The number 1 and number 3, not so good, Tim Couch and Akili Smith.
Yeah, Tim Couch, unfortunately, it was the kind of thing where as a Cleveland Browns fan, I will say that, that was the infamous year of Mike Ditka offering his entire draft of the New Orleans Saints at the time, all of his draft choices for the right to take Ricky Williams. And the Cleveland Browns were an expansion team, and I was sitting there thinking, that's the kind of player that the Browns actually need. Is like, you're not gonna, with a rookie quarterback, you're really gonna struggle. So Tim Couch, yeah, he was definitely one of these guys who was just a victim of poor offensive line and not a lot of supporting talent around him. But yeah, I agree with you. I think Donovan McNabb going number 2. Certainly had a fine career, led Philadelphia to a Super Bowl, had a lot of good moments for the Eagles. So let's hope that Justin Fields at number 11 is going to get off to a great start and a good career in Chicago.
Yeah, let us. That was 1999, by the way. And after the Couch McNabb Smith run, Edger and James, pretty good. Then the Ricky Williams move that you talked about. Then Torrey Holt, Champ Bailey, David Boston. That's a pretty good, run of picks after Akili Smith.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
All right, getting back to this year, what do you think of Pete Werner's situation? Were you surprised he went second round? I mean, I thought he would go probably in the late third or early fourth, maybe in that range, but a lot of people pretty high on Pete Werner.
It was surprising, but I also want to give credit. I seem to recall that on Buckeyes Scoop that there were rumblings that Pete Werner was possibly going to go in the later first. Let's face it. I mean, Ohio State fans have had a love-hate relationship, and I think the love has been more from the coaches. And hate might be a little strong, but the fans have been more kind of puzzled or befuddled in terms of, why do you guys love this guy so much? So I think the fact that he was picked as high as he was is kind of, it speaks to NFL teams recognize his versatility and his solid play. I want to give credit to Bill Landis of The Athletic, because on Twitter he was saying, has anyone come up with a nickname for Pete Werner, Saint Pete, now that he's going down to New Orleans. So hopefully if Landis doesn't have that copyrighted, maybe you and I can do that. But anyway, yeah, I wish him nothing but the best down in New Orleans.
Yeah, it's pretty great. He'll join some of his teammates down there, some of his ex-Buckeye teammates down there. The Saints seem to like their Buckeyes, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and that was an interesting pick to me. And I think the thing that really seals it is this is a guy who, if I'm not mistaken, last year did not give up a pass completion of, was it 20 yards or was it 15?
I'm not sure, but again, he was highly effective in coverage. That's all I can say. In terms of the precise yardage, I'd have to look that up.
So good for Pete. And then, of course, you knew you're going to have those offensive linemen come off the board. I think I would have taken Wyatt Davis a little higher if I needed a guard. But, I will say I'm admittedly biased. But I thought that he's a guy who could flourish in the NFL. And, you see guys fall a little further than you expect them to fall every year, and so it's not a big surprise. Who do you think ended up in the best spot?
Of the offensive linemen or just in general?
Just of the 10 Buckeyes that were taken.
Wow. Something I'm going to – because we already talked – I'm going to have to disqualify myself because I'm biased from the Tommy Togiai. I really think Tommy Togiai – has a really good situation because you're talking about the Browns had just cut Sheldon Richardson in a salary cap move. And we talked earlier about just the defensive line interior that I think he slides into their rotation. I'm going to go kind of off the beaten path here. And I'm going to go with Josh Myers simply because of what you said earlier. And I apologize if I stole your pick. Josh Myers, in the sense that Green Bay has, a solid team. Now, granted, there's a firestorm between Aaron Rodgers and the front office right now that hopefully will be resolved. But you're talking about a team that went to the NFC Championship. It's very talented. He should be able to, with the right coaching. We were just talking about Justin Fields getting signed in time, performing well in mini camps preseason. He should be able to slide into a starting role.
Yeah, he'll definitely be in contention for that. I think this is kind of a surprise, maybe picked by me. I think Luke Farrell has a good position that he's in because his coach knows him so well. He won't be expected to come in and be the starter or be a star. And he's just one of those guys I think is a highly underrated guy who will help the run game. He's a good blocker, and he's surprisingly good at pass catching. So he's going to convert third downs for you as well. I like Luke Farrell and the situation he's in.
Very good pick. And I agree with you when you say that he's going into a good situation with Urban Meyer as his former head coach, that I think in a lot of ways that the culture shock that I don't want to say will, but may be coming to Jacksonville is going to be second nature for somebody like Luke Farrell. I think, he's already going to know a lot of the Urban Meyer isms, for lack of a better word. And I'm kind of curious to see how Urban Meyer transforms his style and approach from 18 to 22-year-olds, to, let's just say, to men, like how he kind of adjusts his technique and approach, because what worked at the college level may not necessarily work at the NFL level. But again, I think Luke Farrell definitely is in a very good situation.
All right, before we get to the undrafted free agents, I do want to mention Shaun Wade to the Ravens is an interesting pick. The Ravens are a good organization. They're very thorough when it comes into scouting talent. They know what they're doing. What annoyed me about this pick was how ESPN kind of crapped all over it, and I think it was Louis Riddick on the coverage was talking about how, he was really good shut down slot corner in 2019, but then he moved outside in 2020, and he can't, proved that he couldn't hold up, so he's not going to hold up at the NFL level, covering guys like Tyreek Hill. It made it sound like the Ravens are going to play the Chiefs every week. He's not going to be covering Tyreek Hill every week. And I'm sorry, but if a guy shows you he can do something on the inside and then he doesn't hold up on the outside, you're probably not drafting him to play him on the outside, right?
Exactly. And I agree with you. I think, Sean Wade is one of those players that I genuinely feel sorry for, in the sense that he came back, was, trying to, for the team, adjust to a different position, battled injuries. It was a very difficult year, but I think he landed in a really good situation in Baltimore.
Yeah, he really did. It probably cost himself 3 rounds in the draft by coming back.
Easily.
But we wish Sean Wade the best, even though he's one of the hated Ravens for your Browns. I know we are up against our time. We got to get out of here, but I want to talk about the UFAs real quickly. The undrafted free agents: Jake Hausman ends up signing with the Lions, Tuff Borland with the Vikings, Blake Haubeil with the Titans, Justin Hilliard with the 49ers, and Drew Chrisman with the Bengals. Out of this group, I thought that Justin Hilliard and maybe Drew Chrisman would get drafted. I'm not surprised Tuff Borland didn't, because the NFL has become a speed league, and as we know, Tuff Borland is not a speedy guy. What is your overall take on the undrafted free agents?
I think they all chose well. From what I understand, Justin Hilliard got a nice free agent contract. I can't remember the precise contract terms, but from what I understand, it was a pretty good deal. I agree with you. I thought Justin Hilliard certainly seemed logical to pick late, as well as Drew Chrisman. I think, anytime when you talk about special teams players such as Drew Chrisman, Blake Haubeil, I think the possibility of them latching on, it's the kind of thing where there have been numerous players at those respective positions that have had long NFL careers. Just because they were not picked does not mean that they can't make an NFL roster.
Yeah, who do you think has the best chance of sticking around of these guys?
I'm going to go with Chrisman, simply because when he's on, he can be truly effective. Like you said, we sometimes have not seen the great Drew Chrisman punts as consistently, like in the last year, as we had grown accustomed to. But maybe in the NFL, knowing kind of, all right, your livelihood depends on it, maybe we'll see more of that. That's my pick of the undrafted free agents, in terms of possibly being able to latch on permanently with an NFL team.
Yeah, I think he's probably my pick as well. A good punter can. I think it's easier to win a job in camp when you're a punter, because you can visibly see the difference between 2 or 3 punters. It's very easy to see that, as opposed to somebody who's maybe playing interior defensive line or something. Justin Hilliard, I thought, was a guy, like you said, I thought he would be drafted because of his talent. I know he's had injury problems, and that's probably what held him back. But I mean, teams took chances on guys with histories of injuries all draft long. It wasn't like this wasn't supposed to be one of the deeper drafts in recent history. So I think you saw a few more chances being taken. I mean, my Dolphins took a chance on a very talented defensive end that was coming off an injury for the University of Miami. And I saw a couple other guys in the first and second round, guys that didn't play a lot and because of injuries, and they got drafted very highly. So, to spend a 6th or 7th round pick on a Justin Hilliard seems fairly logical to me.
I agree. Like I said, I thought that he certainly was a logical candidate to be selected in the later rounds. I'm surprised that he wasn't, but I certainly wish nothing but the best for him in San Francisco. I think it landed in a really good spot for himself.
Indeed. And another guy I think may surprise people and end up making his team, maybe Jake Hausman.
It's a possibility.
Yeah.
All I know is Detroit really, with this draft, they kind of focused on, all right, we want tough individuals, along the line of scrimmage. And, we were talking earlier about Luke Farrell. I think Hausman was one of these guys who kind of, when he did get an opportunity to play, it was usually more on the blocking side of it. So if he can show a little bit more to his game than blocking, he certainly is as good a chance as any to make the roster in Detroit.
Yeah. I guess the biggest surprise for me is that Tuff Borland didn't get signed by the Patriots, because he seems like a Bill Belichick type.
I think Bill Belichick probably would respect the instincts, but as you said, and I know it's going to sound very judgmental and harsh, the reality is I think Tuff Borland's lack of foot speed probably is what would preclude Coach Belichick from signing Tuff Borland.
Yeah, exactly. I think he's a good football player, but in today's NFL, you have to be very, very fast. You've seen the change in the physique of linebackers over the years and how that's gone. He's more of a throwback type, maybe even a bit of a tweener, in fact. But he's not built like the linebackers of today that are just lightning quick and maybe not as bulky as the linebackers of the past.
Exactly.
All right, Chip, that will conclude our coverage of the draft and where the Ohio State Buckeyes figured. Unless you have anything else you want to add, we can move on.
No, we can move on.
All right.
It was a good conversation.
All right, Chip, we are done. That is all of the topics that I had prepared for this week. So I think we did pretty well. Where can the folks find you on the internet?
I can be found on Twitter at Chip Minnich. Last name is spelled Minnich. So besides this podcast, I'm also a contributor to Athlon Sports. So be looking for an article in the near future about 5 Ohio State Buckeyes who could be selected in the 2022 NFL Draft.
Oh, my goodness. We always have to start that right after one thing ends. We have to talk about it happening the next time. I am at Mike36fan on Twitter. I am the grumpy old Buckeye at Buckeye Scoop. And, of course, I'm on this podcast with Mr. Chip Minnich. And that's where you can find me. If you are interested in music, you can also find me on Substack. I have a newsletter called Michael's Record Collection. Just go to Substack.com and type in Michael's Record Collection. You can find me there. And I enjoy talking about other topics other than the Buckeyes. But this is my thing here right now with you, Chip. That's it. We're going to call it a day. I think we were pretty concise for a change. And you and I will be back in 2 weeks. And we'll have another show on the horizon. We don't have those topics yet. We'll just see how things go between now and then. And we'll put our list together.
Sounds good. Looking forward to it.
All right. Without further ado, then, we'll wrap this thing up. Thanks for listening. Check out all the other Buckeye Scoop Radio Network shows, please. Too numerous to mention, but of course the Morning Scoop, the Buckeye Weekly, the Sloopcast, those are the main ones that pop right into my mind. Read our stuff at BuckeyeScoop.com. Get an insider subscription. It's not that expensive, and you get all kinds of really good nuggets of information up front. I shouldn't have to tell you that by this point. And we will wrap it up the way we always do by saying, "Go Bucks!"
Go Bucks!